Hello. So, welcome to another edition of the Valhalla Movement podcast. We've got today a very interesting guest, something kind of outside of Valhalla, but very much related. We've got Boysen Hodgson here, who's the marketing director of the Mankind Project, if I'm not mistaken, right?
For Mankind Project USA, yes.
Okay, Mankind Project USA. Okay, very specific on that. So the Mankind Project, for people who want to follow along and look at this right now, you can type in mankindproject.org, check out their website and that kind of stuff. This is something you guys can do interactively while you listen. But I'd love to thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about being here.
So the Mankind Project is a name that evokes a lot in me personally. But I'd love to understand, first of all, what it is, and then maybe a little bit of the history that led to what you guys have created at this point.
Cool. So let me I'll give you a why statement even before a what statement.
Beautiful.
So a why statement is that we have a belief that the world could use more self-aware, self-responsible, emotionally mature, accountable, compassionate male leaders and role models in the world. Mm-hmm. Building communities and working with others and partnering with women and other men and institutions and organizations to create something that I think resonates a lot with the work that you guys are doing in Valhalla, creating a more sustainable, safer, connected, wisdom-based kind of world. So there's a why we do what we do today. And the what is... So the Mankind Project is a 501c3 nonprofit in the United States. We're nonprofit all over the world. We are a 30-year-old organization. We got started out of a single training program that was designed by three men in the early 80s, like 1982, I think, was when they started meeting and knew each other, and 84 was when they planned the first weekend training adventure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were three very different guys. So there was a feminist therapist named Bill Kauth.
Okay.
He was a very already in touch and involved. He was in the kind of second wave feminism. He was a feminist therapist, and he was at a conference of feminist therapists and noticed that, he was one or two men among 150 or so women. And all of these women, he looked around and said, they're connected with each other. They are emotionally authentic with each other. They know how to tell the truth, even if it hurts, even if it's hard. They're actually doing the work of kind of building something together and knowing how to support one another. Mm-hmm. And the way that he describes it, the way that Bill talks about it is like, we need something like that for men. And he looked around and he said, who's going to do this? And realized over the course of a very short period of time that it was going to be him that would start doing something. And so he called up a couple of guys that he had been doing some work with. One of them was a university professor, a PhD in curriculum studies and psychologist. And the other was an ex-Marine who at that time was working as an engineer for General Motors.
Wow.
So the three of them got together and created what they called at the time the Wild Man Weekend, which is now morphed into what the training that we call the New Warrior Training Adventure, which is has been the big gateway into the Mankind Project. Less so now than it has been in the past, but the New Warrior Training is like emotional intelligence boot camp for men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like a mix between like a hero's journey, and I don't know if you know the history of the name Valhalla, right? But the Viking history of warriors and honorable warriors going to this distant land once they die. So so if you're familiar with that, I think it resonates with most men.
Absolutely. My dog's name is Freya, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
So yes, absolutely. So the idea of the New Warrior, that they framed it as, they didn't know they were creating a hero's journey when they did. Mm-hmm. But the entire process is based around this idea of a hero's journey, a separation from your normal world, what you're used to, a descent into the unknown, a descent into darkness, which is, very rich space for transformation, an ordeal, so a confrontation with something. In our context, it's a confrontation with some aspect of yourself or parts of yourself that you have put away, hidden, repressed, denied, pain, old wounds in your life. That is kind of the ordeal that you go through, is facing those things on the weekend, and then a reintegration into community. So with a kind of built-in celebration, and the new warrior, as opposed to the old warrior kind of idea of machismo, domination, intense hierarchy, overuse of resources, patriarchy, follow the stream.
Of course.
The new warrior is kind of a man who has come to recognize both his generative, nurturing, compassionate capacity, and is aware of his destructive possibilities, and is willing to take responsibility for those destructive possibilities in his life, and work with other men to support himself and challenge other men to live out of their, live out of a higher self, live out of what they know is best for them, with a sense of purpose and mission.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a word that I would have expected to hear, and I'm very happy is there, which is the word of responsibility.
Yeah.
And amongst many ways of describing a man, there's be it biologically or what the role of a man is. Right. And I guess what also would separate a man from, I guess, a boy or somebody who, you know what I mean, like somebody who's developing into a man kind of thing, right. is that degree of responsibility. And responsibility has changed over time, right? Like responsibility in what the old warrior kind of way is what worked then and what was needed at that time to maybe bestow what we have now, right? The beautiful, balanced, and delicate world that we have now, but such a much more peaceful, calm world. I mean, generally, yes, obviously there's still problems and stuff, but we don't have that same fight that we kind of used to for the most part. What's interesting about that is, and this is maybe where this kind of came out of, is that men feel like they lost part of the role in that. And I don't think it's any coincidence that women's role started growing and flourishing as well, as when that role diminished, where that warrior role was able to calm itself down a little bit. We found a much more of a balance between the genders, and that's great. But in that, I'm assuming, and I kind of notice it. I mean, if I look around me, there's definitely men who have lost their sense of purpose. Right? They don't really know what their role is necessarily, and it's not as clearly defined as it used to be. And we have this, I don't know, I can't remember the person who came up with this, but the fact that if we have more choices, that we actually have more depression that comes with that. So the illusion of choice, basically, and that if we have tons of variety of choices versus like the old warrior, which would be like, look, I'm born, there's a war going on, we have to fight this battle, and it was very easy for them to follow that path. Their sense of purpose was basically defined by their circumstance. Yes. But it's not necessarily anymore. I mean, yes, there's circumstance, rich or poor, this or that, whatever you're born into, but that ability to have choice and that option actually led to way more confusion. So we think that option is a good thing, but in reality, option is a detrimental thing, and it actually inhibits purpose versus allows us to pick it. Yes, we do have that choice, but we have a hard time doing it. I'm assuming that what you guys are doing is kind of addressing that.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to speak a little bit about that.
That's fun. I could go off many ways. Predictably Irrational, I think, is one of the books that talks about that whole overwhelm of choice, too many choices. And
yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Who is the one that coined that?
I don't remember. I've got Predictably Irrational on my shelf back there, but I don't. There have been a couple of great books over the last couple of years that have talked about that. Yeah, that overwhelm. Yeah. So, yeah, there's no more tigers lurking in the woods, right? So, a lot of our early genetic evolution and early kind of development in gender roles was based on imminent threat, and also based on a much more limited understanding of how we are connected, how we are interconnected. So most of us, and I'm guessing most of your listeners now, when we wake up and we look around, we don't just identify. We do have the identification with the very small circle,
Mm-hmm.
my family. We may have a larger identification with community. We may have and we'll talk about how some of those ties are lost as well, right? The kind of degradation of community. But, so let's look with awakened mind, we look around and we say, holy shit, I'm connected to everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm connected to everyone.
Yeah.
I'm connected to, I'm connected to people on the other side of the world who I will never meet.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I bring that awareness into my life? And it's overwhelming.
And what responsibility do you have towards that person?
And
right?
what
Because if you're connected to
responsibility?
them, there's an inherent responsibility that comes with
Yes.
like what is my role in relation to that person, right?
What am I accountable to? And what is my vision? What am I willing to encompass in my vision of the world? So the Mankind Project, the New Warrior Training, our groups, men's groups that we run, one of the things that we focus on is this idea of purpose and mission, and a man's personal sense of purpose is one of the things that we specifically address on the New Warrior Training Adventure weekend by taking a look back at things that were missing, things that may have felt missing for a kid in the world, for a little boy in the world, and then following that line to, okay, who am I now? What skills do I have? What do I believe is really needed in the world? And what action am I going to take to help make that so? And so for some men, and we meet men where they are, so we don't have a global mission. We don't have we are the water changers. We are the we don't have a global mission like that. Men pursue what they are driven toward, what they are led by in their own, what they're passionate about, to find a mission. And we meet a man where he is. So for some guys, that when he comes out of a weekend and when he's doing, work in a men's group, that may be, what, I want to be there for my family and be present in a way that I've never been before. And I'm going to do my work so that I can do that, so that I can be there for my kids as the right, the man that I want to be with my wife or my partner, my kids, my community. And for other men, that has meant going to the other side of the world and starting a school. That has meant creating projects, working with men and women, incarcerated men and women in prisons. That has meant creating projects to work with adolescent boys and girls in inner city school districts. To environmental projects, sustainability, permaculture, something a lot about.
Yeah.
All of these different kinds of things that are driven by what a man's good at and what he's passionate about, and then he goes out into the world and pursues those things with that sense of a much broader sense of responsibility, not only for his own actions, but also the sense of being my brother's keeper, the sense of I'm going to look at the world and see what's needed, rather than just looking at myself, that boy psychology that you were kind of pointing at before, which is like self-centric, moving into a balance of, I still know that I have to do my work so that I'm the best man that I can be in the world, so that I can serve more effectively in the
community around you, not only the community of men, but the community of women and people and nature and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned so purpose is clearly part of it, right? Because when a man or a woman or anyone, but particularly a man, but we're talking about men at this point, has his purpose laid out in front of him, or he sees it, because it's always there, right?
Yeah.
I think we all feel it inside of us, but we don't know, it's not always clear, and how we come about it is always clear, or how we execute it is not always clear.
Right.
what have you guys seen in all of these warrior trainings? I mean, you guys have what, 30 years of experience. You were talking to you
Yeah.
clearly have shaped the lives, or at least changed the perspectives of thousands of people at this point, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Um,
53,000 men have gone through the warrior training
well,
over the
there you go.
last 3 years. Yeah.
So there's the number. Um, in that, there must have been some kind of secret path or way of, like, let's say you have the man is driving a car and there's tons of stuff on the windshield, and you guys have found a way to kind of be the windshield wiper in this process and allow
Hey, cool.
somebody to see the road in front of them. That's kind of how I see it. And there's so many people who write to Valhalla every day saying, hey, I want to be a part of this, or I'd love to know more, or how can I be integrated? What can I do to help you? And personally, my answer, and everyone's answer who answers these emails is different, I'm assuming, but my answer is always, well, what is it that you really feel called to? What is your real purpose that you are messaging us for? What are you looking from us? And then whatever that is, like, pursue it to the end of time. Like, pursue it, you know what I mean? Like, just do it. Like, and we'll help you. We'll enable you to do it. If it's like, hey, I want to be a writer, great, write something. Like, write whatever it calls to you, and we'll put it. We'll publish it, or we'll find or connect you with people who are like-minded, or whatever. We're actively trying to help people do it, but there's always a gap. There's a whole bunch of people who message us. There's many people who identify the fact that they want to be a part of it, but there's very few that, once we tell them that kind of message, really actually see the other side. I think
Awesome.
most of them revert back to themselves and are back into this cycle of being lost again, as to how they can actually play a part. I would love to know what you have to say about that. Like, what, is there a secret? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, what is it that you guys are doing that is unlocking so many people's minds? Because it's really working.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. So much fun. Yeah, so in the work that we do, one of the things that we focus on is, and this is not just in our training programs, but so, MKP, we run about almost 100 of these new warrior trainings a year all over the world. We're in 9 global regions. And in the United States, we're in over 30 communities in the United States, and that can encompass, like all of New England. We've got little pockets of guys in New England. But one of the things that we focus on is, okay, what am I, we talk about it in terms of shadow, kind of this Jungian idea of shadow. What am I hiding, repressing, and denying? What have I put away into my unconsciousness that I spend, and for some men, depending on where you are, I could be spending the majority of my energy and my vital energy trying to keep hidden from myself or others the stuff that I've packed away into my unconsciousness. And when you get right down to it, the fear, shame, sense of unworthiness that so many men carry, that we deny to each other, that we deny to the world, gets in the way of our living, actually being willing to say, okay, yeah, I'm willing to confront the fear that I know I'm going to feel when I start living into my purpose. Okay, so I know what I'm passionate about, and I'm guessing this is true of the people who email you as well. They know what they're passionate about. It's sitting right there. They know where the path is.
I don't know if they're, I don't know, like, I definitely know. Like, there's no way you don't.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do on the weekend? What do you do that, or what do you read about that excites you, or what do you listen to, whatever. We all have a passion, and we're all able to identify to varying degrees of being able to pinpoint it, right? Like, there's certain people that it's harder to pinpoint.
Yeah.
Or other people are looking to identify it, but then they're looking to, like, turn it into a job. And that's somewhat the problem sometimes, is that they're seeing the job and they're trying to, like, identify it in a box of a job versus identifying it in a box of, like, an emotion. Where it's just like, hey, I do this, it makes me feel great. And so whatever that is their passion, right?
Yeah.
And it calls to them, and they want to do it. If they could do it all day, every day, they would. And I think that's their passion.
Yeah.
what there's a difference between their passion and what they see as a job or what they can do to monetize it. I think that's
What they
different.
can
But
create out of that. Yeah. And
yeah.
we're going to talk about, the rich discussion. Very fun. So what MKP does is help guys uh, using all sorts of different skills and technologies and communication stuff and ways of going through conflict and shadow work. So,
Hmm.
what are you going to do if you find a shadow? Let's do some shadow work and look at it, get it out here in the light in front of us so that I can keep week by week in my life going to a men's group, guys that I trust, guys that know me better than anybody else, and say, if I've got something going on in my life, here's my work this week.
Hmm.
This is what I need to work on so that I can clear this next block to living my purpose and pursuing my passion in the way that I want to. And that creates the possibility for me of building a more fulfilling, supportive, nurturing container in my marriage with my wife. Because if I can get my shit handled so that I'm not dumping my emotional baggage into my marriage,
Hmm.
what's freed up?
Hmm.
My energy, my vitality is freed up in my marriage to create something more powerful here
Hmm.
or with my neighbors or in my work. If I'm not constantly dealing with the frustrations and hassles and miscommunications and my projections that I'm making onto people and my judgments and all of that crap that gets in the way of me having clear, open communication
Hmm.
with people, how much more effective am I going to be at doing whatever it is that I'm doing, whether
Hmm.
I'm collecting garbage or building websites and doing videos or building communities.
Hmm.
How much more effective am I going to be?
And there's something. So just to quickly, you touched on something that evoked a thought in me, which is it seems like when you're pulling somebody's shadow out, right, and into the light, what you kind of are doing is breaking down that whole idea that men and people have to be tough all the time, right? It's like you as a man or have always been told like, oh, okay, like you have these emotions, but you got to be tough. And kids would tease you if you weren't tough, and that's how it kind of worked in school, in the school playground, or that's how it works in even a business or in many things. It's like the person who has the least emotion sometimes is the one that
Yeah,
is
right.
going to be the victor.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
in the short run, sometimes it proves to be true, right?
uh-huh.
Definitely. Obviously, the people who are more the maybe the people doing the picking or maybe the jock type were less emotionally in tune with themselves, but they were more emotionally strong because they were able to suppress it more.
Yeah,
But it's not uncommon to see that the jock generally didn't end up getting a job or creating a life that ended up completely fulfilling his passion or his purpose. Whereas the type of person who did get picked on dealt with those emotions, but slowly but surely unleashed them and let them come out. And those are the people who we see are the most effective at being not men, but just the most effective at being the type of people who are happy with their purpose and happy in their approach to living it out. I think
yeah.
that's the main difference.
And if you look at, if you dive into any of the developmental psychology or, Ken, are you familiar with Ken Wilber's work,
I,
these
I
days? Or
I kind of Googled him, so I saw your video and I
good
saw him
stuff.
talking, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have to Google this
Gonna
guy
have to
because he
look
had
this
some
guy up.
yeah he had some
So
cool
when do we
videos.
evolve is the question, and we evolve when our circumstances force us to. When the container gets hot enough, when the cauldron is hot enough,
Hmm.
we evolve. And so I think that speaks to that kind of aspect of bullying, and you'll end up with, or if a kid on either side of that, the bully or the kid who was perpetrated against, ends up just stuffing all that, then where does it come out later? Then
Hmm.
you end up with the Wolf of Wall Street. Then you end up with, how do we end up perpetrating our own wounds
Yeah.
onto the world when we don't have a more effective way of handling that? And the other thing that you were speaking to is kind of gender roles, right? And so masculinity, femininity. So I'm gonna just call those buckets. You know, masculinity and femininity are buckets that we throw. We've labeled a bunch of characteristics and we've thrown them into these buckets.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's start pulling out some of these things that we call feminine: nurturance,
Mm-hmm.
compassion, softness, openness, vulnerability. Let's look at that. Does that have value to a man to survive and thrive in this time?
Absolutely.
In our evolutionary, yeah, good. So yeah, all right, cool. I want some of that.
Yeah.
Now let's be a woman and let's take out aggressiveness in the sense of healthy aggression. I'm going to go for what I want.
Mm-hmm.
That's been associated with masculinity. Tim, does a woman need that in today's world to like help move forward this evolutionary thing that we've got? Yeah, absolutely. So how can we get men and women in a kind of degendered way to look at things in terms of characteristic and pick what's healthy? Because almost any of these things are going to have like a really bright, healthy aspect and a really possibility of that destructive capability.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I don't want to be the wimpy new age guy in quotations. You know, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be able to create something in the world. I want to be able to get through conflict in a tight, healthy way when I need to, in myself and conflict with others. I don't want to shrink back from that all the time. We need men and women not shrinking away from what we're confronted with.
Yeah.
Not only in our families and our communities, but globally. That sense, you know, like, I'm going to look at this global village. We need a whole lot of people not turning away.
Yeah.
And willing to do the work to break through the fears, the shadows, whatever has been holding them back from taking that step toward what they want. As I'm projecting because I've never been to Valhalla, but I've only heard about it,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm projecting onto you guys that this is what you're about. You're about creating the container for this kind of, we're willing to take responsibility for not only ourselves, but for the world.
Yeah.
In a healthy way.
Absolutely. And it's about creating the right environment for not only the people who are already part of it, so the existing members or people who are looking to be a part of it, but also for other people who feel like they're trapped in that cycle where they know they want to change, they have things in mind, they kind of understand their purpose, but they're looking for something to jump to. We have this metaphor which is like jump off the cliff, but nobody ever says what happens after the cliff.
That's right.
And I kind of understand it because I've done it, right? And I think everyone has, in their small way, shape, or form. Everyone has jumped off a cliff, but not everyone has jumped off the social responsibility cliff. The cliff that says there's me, and then there's beyond me, or beyond my personal surroundings. So it's not like me doesn't necessarily need to only encompass yourself, but it also encompasses your selfishness in relation to only your family or only your friends or that kind of me.
Yes.
Okay, the extended me, I would call it. And that person generally wants to feel part of the other things. And that's, to me, why we become fans of sports or singers or all these things, because these are little communities.
Yeah.
These are things that we can get behind that are external to us. They have this higher purpose that is more than us. The purpose is not always like this, altruistic, save the planet purpose, but it's just a purpose. It's like to win whatever championship or to do whatever it is. It doesn't matter. That's just the purpose. And the same applies for us in the way that we're just trying to get more people to jump onto the purpose of, hey, I want a better world. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many of us, and I mean, I would say everyone in the world would say, I want a better world. But how many people commit to that? Mm-hmm. How many people could say, okay, well, what do I really do to make a better world?
Mm-hmm.
And Valhalla is not about the answer to that question so much as the pursuit of that question. And the pursuit of trying to find the answers. We as Valhalla don't have all the answers, and nor should every man have any or all answers to all of those things. Right. But the point is that he can kind of kick the ball along the path, or kick the rock down the path, so that we kind of get there. Because in doing such, that's what makes it possible.
Yeah.
That's people are like, there's so many things that there are examples that people term us in, and I'm going to go off on Valhalla a little bit here, which is that people who believe in permaculture and all these things are hippies. And I take such offense to that word, not because I have anything wrong with hippies, but because of what I know they entail with that word, which is that we're tree huggers and then we're protesters and all these things. And I'm like, no, that's not at all what this is about. It's not at all about tree hugging or protesting. This is about trying to find the solution and actively doing it together.
Yeah.
And as opposed to complaining, actually being it, actually actively learning these things and bringing them into the forefront. And not forcing it down somebody's throat or saying, hey, our political ideology is better than this and that is better than the other. No, this is a positive way of people coming together, of people acting together, and people feeling a part of something that is bigger than them.
Yeah.
That's Valhalla to me. And to everyone, I think. And I think we all have a very clear sense of that within the group, which is great. Very few people have ever had that luxury of understanding that in the same way that I think people who really become part of these kind of groups do feel. So I'm assuming that all these new warriors, right?
Yeah.
They go through the training, but they don't go through the training and then all of a sudden just leave and go back to their extended self anymore.
No, it's about
they
the
always
work.
have that extended self, but that circle has broadened, and I think that that's why we're having this podcast today. I think that's why it's so interesting. Having searched through your site is, people would say, well, I don't understand how this is related to Valhalla, but this is exactly related to Valhalla because that's the gap that I was talking about earlier, where the jump between what you're doing and where you want to be, that landing pad wherever you end up is pretty much what we're trying to make clearer and clearer and clearer.
Yeah.
And the same applies to Valhalla, and the same seems to apply to you guys.
Absolutely. And the question for, your listeners is, do you want the skills to be able to make that jump? Mm-hmm. And, and to be able to pick yourself up and have other resources available to you when what runs out. Mm-hmm. When I've reached the end of my knowledge, when I've reached the end of what I am wise to, I've got a community that I can turn to. And this is really hard to get as a movement. It's really hard to get even as a community, and it frustrates the hell out of me, and it frustrates others as well. But you know what? You can't stop doing the silly, ridiculous, stupid work of community building once you've established it.
Absolutely.
The people in community, the time it takes, you have to take the time face to face, and more importantly, like heart to heart with the people in your community in an ongoing way in order to keep building towards that action, that bigger impact that you want to have. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
It's so true.
You have to be able to go back. And as annoying as it is, I get to keep looking at the same stupid stuff that I've looked at since I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. The same voices in my head, the same messages that I got, like all of this gender stuff about what it means to be a man and what it, and you're not a real man. And you're not a real man because you're not making enough money. You're not a real man because you're not driving the right car. You don't have the hottest whatever, all of those things. This is work that is ongoing. I don't do it once and I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I do it once and I do it again. And what I was also into this crazy CrossFit exercising thing, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole idea of CrossFit is it's not about getting bigger, getting huge. It's about your recovery speed. That's the whole core of CrossFit is about how fast do you recover. Mm-hmm. So, and what we do with men in MKP is give them skills to make faster recoveries. Did it again. Caught myself. Oh yeah, it's that piece of work again. ... Step 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Back on path. rather than getting diverted. And this is, you spoke to it, and I see so many other people speak to it. Yeah, I'm going to get involved in this movement. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to hit a wall, and then bam, I'm out of there.
I'm out of there.
It's about.
Yeah, I see it every day, and I don't want to. It's not like I'm not smiling because I want to.
Yeah,
I'm smiling because I recognize the pattern.
Yeah.
I see the pattern, and I see it over and over and over again. And this is, to somebody listening right now, I'm gonna twist this back into our realm, right? You want to be a more sustainable person, right, listener? That's why you contacted Valhalla. That's probably why you're watching these kind of videos. You're interested in sustainability. Well, sustainability is not a thing that you buy, or it's not a weekend workshop. It's a lifestyle. It's waking up every day and chopping wood and carrying water, right? It's every single day you got to go out there and think to yourself, how am I making the choices that I am as an individual, and how can I make them more sustainable? And sustainable doesn't necessarily mean green. It doesn't just mean how can I reduce my environmental impact. It could also mean how can I just make my action today make me save more time tomorrow. So, example, let's go back to the chopping wood thing, right? You could chop wood with your hands, but it might take you a long time. You could chop wood with an axe, it might take you a little less time, and you could chop wood with a chainsaw, and that might save you a whole bunch of time. Mm-hmm. To me, sustainability is the move between the hand and the chainsaw. That's kind of how that's what you're moving towards. You're moving down that progression of a path, slowly but surely, into developing that chainsaw, because that's what allowed you to be able to do it more efficiently and in more balance with nature and your pattern and your time frame, for example. Now, obviously, chopping wood is maybe not the sustainable example here, but from the environmental point of view, although it can be, and there's definitely ways to do these things sustainably. I think there's ways to do anything sustainably, really. Yes. But it's what I'm trying to point out here is the lifestyle and the progression, and that it takes time. You don't go from hands to chainsaw without doing the axe first to some degree. There's a learning curve. There's something that we all have to travel and we all have to go through, and you'll reach it when you reach it. And there's a patience involved in it, and there's a lot of course correction involved. It's not like I'm sure you guys aren't advertising that somebody shows up to one of these new warrior weekends or workshops of any kind, and that all of a sudden the next day they're that new warrior and they'll never have to worry about it ever again. They'll never have to think about these kinds of topics. No, I think it's the exact opposite. You're going to have to think about it every day. It's all about applying these simple things that you're going to learn, these simple course corrections, and constantly doing them every single day.
That's right. It's a continuous improvement thing. And you made your big pitch. So we've been talking a lot about purpose. Yes. And one of the things that MKP's got going, Mankind Project USA's got going right now is this is our second annual summit called the Power of Purpose Summit. And this is open to everybody. It's open to men and women. And we've got 28 speakers, some of whom they've written books on purpose. They run organizations based on creating your purposeful life. They do the work that you were talking about, is how do I go from what I know is my passion and my purpose to, a sustainable life, actually being able to create work that I love and that will work for me. Some of the folks so Ken Wilber, who we've already mentioned, Dan Millman, who a lot of people know from Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and he has an entire book on purpose. Mm-hmm. Tim Kelly, who's written a book on purpose. Chris Atwood and Janet Bray Atwood, who do a thing called the Passion Test, which is all about purpose. Charles Eisenstein, do you know Charles Eisenstein?
I do, yes. His book was a huge influence to, less me particularly, ironically, but because I followed this kind of stuff very religiously. But actually many of our members, and the gift economy and all the things that go with it. Oh man, it's fascinating. Charles Eisenstein, we've met him in person. We've done some workshops with him. We actually had a podcast with Charles Eisenstein too.
Charles he's a pretty cool guy. He's also a new warrior.
Yeah. Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people. He did the training maybe 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago.
Wow.
Something like that.
So like around the time he was doing these books, basically.
Yeah, so this is all there, and there are a lot of people. We run into people like that a lot
Hmm.
who, they're living powerful missions in the world, and they've taken, MKP is not in. It's not a manual. It's not a cult of personality. It's not a guru. It's a tool bucket. It's a set of skills and tools that we're constantly updating and trying to add to create this stuff. So powerofpurposesummit.com.
Hmm.
It's a streaming event, so the streaming stuff will be available for a week or a little bit more than a week, and then you can sign up and download the whole thing as a kind of, and we add bonuses to it as an upgrade package. But there's some incredible speakers speaking to exactly this kind of stuff. Is like, what's the difference between where I am now and where I know I want to be? How do I get there? How do I keep doing the this practice of continuous improvement to make things work in my life? So yeah,
So repeat that website one more time, just in case somebody didn't hear it.
powerofpurposesummit.com.
Powerpurposesummit.com. Okay, I'll definitely put that in the description link below. When is the exact event? So somebody might be listening to this on different
Yeah,
times
cool.
during the day.
The event is from March 12th to March 16th, 2014.
Hmm.
So we're doing 4 days of virtual stuff. So it's call-in webinar kind of stuff. And then we're doing a live event on March 16th in Berkeley, California at the David Brower Center. We have 8 speakers that are going to be with us at the David Brower Center. I'm going to actually be out there. I'm looking forward to that as well. So it'll all be
Awesome.
packaged up into this cool summit
Cool.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they want more information, I'm assuming all of that is on the site, right?
Yeah. It's on mankindproject.org. It's on powerpurposesummit.com.
And is that your mandate? Is that like you're making sure that all that info is there? Is that kind of your
That
job?
is one of my jobs. Yes. That
Good.
is one of my jobs. Yeah. So I encourage your listeners, if you're ready, you're standing on the edge. We've been talking about the cliff for this whole thing, right?
Yeah. There's
And
so many people on that edge.
yeah,
And I don't think it's just for the people who have never jumped before. Everyone's jumped before, but who are waiting to jump. I think it's for the people who jump and jump time again.
yeah,
This applies as much to me as it does to anyone, I think, which is
absolutely.
even when I jumped off that edge with creating Valhalla or doing my own business or whatever it is, there's always the next one around the corner. The second you jumped off one, there's like, okay, you got to climb back up, and you find yourself back on that edge again, and you find yourself back in that some of those old spirals of thoughts that you were bringing up,
Yeah,
and then you got to
absolutely.
jump back off again. You got to be like, oh, you know what? I'm doing it again. And for me, personally, I ended up quitting a lot of my jobs, and I had a whole bunch of clients that I ended up dropping, and now I'm trying to reinvent that, and every year, every couple of months, every whatever, there's always that cliff, that hurdle that we kind of need to take in that race in that path. It's not necessarily a race, but yeah.
But it's kind of it's kind of an Escher, the Escher drawings, the endless staircases going in circles, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because every cliff that I jump off of, I still find that the next cliff that I jump off is actually higher than the one before it.
Yeah.
So like, there's this whole, wow, step by step evolutionary process of, some days I notice, wow, I don't, that used to bug me. I used to have a hard time with that one. I used to have a hard time taking that risk. And I don't
Hmm.
have a hard time taking that risk anymore. That's easy.
Yeah.
So let's move on to a bigger risk
And it
together.
gets more fun. I can promise you that. It definitely gets more fun as you take the bigger risks. It seems like you're further down the game. In the same way that a game gets more exciting, like
Yeah.
at the beginning you're really excited to play it, and that's probably what some of these summits and things that you guys are doing bring out in people, right? Like these
Yeah.
kind of events and things really rile somebody up to like, yes, I'm gonna do it, and then they go off and they have to do it, and not everyone does, but most people do, and that's the purpose of that. But what's cool about it is that the further you get down that path, like let's say your goal is to be an entrepreneur, it's not day one that's like, oh, now I'm an entrepreneur and now what? There's excitement around every corner. There's going to
Yeah.
be like another cliff, as you said, that gets higher and higher and higher. But you do see the road behind you, and that's what's
Yep.
really interesting. Is you do think, man, what was I doing before this? Like, how could you even imagine? I can't imagine my life not being an entrepreneur anymore.
Yeah, totally.
Which is, I couldn't, like, you know, people are like, oh, well, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know how you do what you do. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I think what you're doing is scarier than what I'm doing. And it's the opposite. It's just a different lens, right? You're wearing a different set of glasses or a different perspective on life that changes it all.
Absolutely.
This is one of those steps that can, you know, we're promoting it here. We're just shameless promotion in the sense that we're here trying to tell you, and I have no affiliation to this. We're here trying to tell you that if you do this kind of stuff, it's gonna change your life.
Yeah.
And no matter which way you go about it, it's gonna change your life. And so I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I really respect it.
Yeah. At some point in all of these endeavors, your endeavor, my endeavor, our endeavor, there's a point of no return. There's a point at which you look back and you've crossed a threshold that you won't ever go back. You won't ever go back across. And what a liberation that is to know, like, holy crap, I crossed that, and here I am. I'm never going back.
So I want to kind of end, or I want to go into one last thing.
Yeah.
Which is, when was that threshold crossed for you? When did, I'm assuming that your involvement in this, that you have been a new warrior at one point.
Yeah, of course.
I'm assuming you have to have gone through this process as well.
I am. So, I went through the original. I did my new warrior training adventure in 2004, April. Okay. So 10 years ago, celebrating a decade now. And for me, that point of, so I experienced some moments on that weekend during that 48 hours that I can still picture clearly in my mind today, where I hit a realization, like, I did not believe that I was capable of doing what I just did. I didn't think that was possible for me. And then, you know, get me a couple of years down the road, after being connected to a couple of men's groups and there was a point at which I looked back, and how I show up in the world and how I was showing up at that time in my early relationship with the woman who is now my wife of 8.5 years. And the realization that I am never going to be that guy that I was a year and a half ago. Like, I'm never going to go back to that point. Like, I'm able to connect intimately and with presence in my relationship in a way that I wouldn't have believed possible before that point. And every part of my life has changed in that way. Like, holy shit, I can be more present and available than I ever believed I could have been. So that's it for me.
I mean, wow. That's, you know, it says it all, I think. I think it says it all. Presence will lead to the higher understanding of your own path and your own self, and as well as the past people and things around you. And anybody who argues that is just sit there and watch and see it, you know. I think anybody would have a hard time arguing that. I think everyone agrees that more presence in their life would be good. Yeah.
This has been fun, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is great. I would love to I'd love to potentially attend or see more about it. So I'm gonna not only put the link below. I have looked at it already, but I'm gonna look at it further and see what else you guys have going on. And I think I'm gonna look up some of your speakers, because you guys, you know, in Googling and researching what you guys, or who was kind of attending, who was talking.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of names that I've never even heard about, which is interesting. So.
Cool. Yes, absolutely. And we do run New Warrior training adventures in Montreal. So there you go.
Really? Yeah. Yes. You know what? Now you say this, I think I know somebody who actually went through one, and I'm assuming that this is like, I don't know if the term he used is New Warrior, but it has to be. It has to be. Anyway, yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So I would love to hear more about the what's actually happening here in Montreal. We can do that off air, I guess, or whatever, off that. But anyway, anybody wants more information, it's all in the description below. I will have all kinds of links, all kinds of stuff. Even if you're listening to this after the event, like you said, there's tons of information still there. There's things you can check out. I'm assuming there's always these new Warrior Weekend workshops going on.
Yep.
You never miss the boat. There's never too late to jump on this kind of, or jump off that cliff. You always have that opportunity. And you can do it on your own, and you can do it with other people. And I guarantee you that if you do it with other people, if you surround yourself with a good supporting cast and network, those people are going to help you, because, you know, having these conversations out loud and telling it to somebody is how you kind of most effectively can destroy or expose some of those shadows that you have, or and change your perspective. And you know, I could speak tons to that before Valhalla, but I could speak way more about that after Valhalla, and after the beginnings of Valhalla, and every day, and now today, you know, still facing them, still jumping off those cliffs. So I encourage you guys to check this out. I encourage you guys to consider signing up. At least learn more information. If there's any one step you can take right now to do it, just learn more information and go for it. And I promise you, and I know he promises you, that it will change your life. So thank you very much for doing this.
It was great to be here. Thank you.